Joining us right now, former Senator Jim DeMint, of course, former senator from South Carolina, now the bigwig over there at Heritage Foundation. Senator DeMint, thanks for joining us today.
Well, good morning. It's great to be back.
Well, you know, I'm looking at the polls. I'm looking at the president's approval rating. I'm looking at all of these Democrats choosing to not run for re-election. I mean, major names in the Democratic Party who have been in the House of Representatives for a long, long time signals to me that it's a no-brainer. It's a layup for the Republicans to retain leadership in the House, possibly even gaining their majority in the House. So why on earth are they entertaining immigration reform?
It's really hard to imagine. Americans are hurting in a lot of ways. The economy is still bad. Americans want jobs. They want more opportunity. They want to get rid of this Obamacare bill that we now know is going to cost millions of jobs in America. So they're very real problems. And I think only about 3% of Americans think immigration is a top issue. It makes no sense to me at all for Congress to trust this president with something else to do.
Senator DeMint, I've read some stories that suggest that there's a whole lot of money coming from interest groups like the United States Chamber of Commerce, and they're really pushing Republican leadership to take this up on behalf of big business. Do you agree that that's what's really happening here?
Well, that's part of it. There are a lot of businesses that want cheap labor. A lot of high-tech industries need what we call high-tech visas to bring in talent from around the world. And these things really need to be done. Unfortunately, they're being told the only way they can get what our economy needs is to go along with the president and the Democrats on this giant amnesty, which is going to end up hurting our economy and hurting people. So, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do a good reform of our immigration system under this president. But we can begin to put the ideas forward that we need to in immigration reform. But right now, what we can do is push the president to remove some of the regulations and some of the taxes and some of the threats and liabilities that he's put on business so that we can at least build the economy again so Americans can get back to work.
Well, what's going on up there? Because, I mean, if you look at all of the reporting on this overnight, what you see is Mitch McConnell, the minority leader of the Senate, saying, hey, immigration reform's just not going to happen this time around. Interesting that he would say that. But then you read these reports that there are secret negotiations between some members of the House and the Senate, and that the Speaker of the House is in favor of doing something on immigration. So what is truth?
Well, unfortunately, regardless of what Mitch McConnell thinks right now, it's in the House's hands. If they pass anything on immigration, it will go to conference with the Senate bill. And we know how conferences come out if you just saw what the Farm Bill did. Yep. I mean, it's generally much worse than what went in. So I think it's dangerous for the House to try to take this up. They need to focus on the issues that Americans really care about, like the economy, jobs, Obamacare. We need a replacement for that. And Americans at least need to know what Republicans think we should do to replace Obamacare. And there's some good ideas coming out of the House. So everyone around the country I know is scratching their heads. So why would Republicans bring up something that's so divisive and that Americans aren't interested in at a time when 80% of Americans already don't trust the federal government? It just doesn't make sense to give this president a lot more authority, which he would get through an immigration bill.
There was a CBO report about the Affordable Care Act and its impact on employment. It says, number one, that a lot of hours are being reduced. We sort of expected that to happen. Number two, that it's going to reduce the number of full-time employed. We sort of saw that coming. The third one is that many people will apparently choose not to work because they don't need to work to get health care. So this is having a real impact. What's your sense of how Republicans should handle this matter going forward?
Well, this is something that Heritage Foundation predicted a few years ago, and I know from being in a small business, opening a business today with the liability now from health care, all the other things that the government is throwing at companies, I think you're going to see a lot less people opening businesses because of the liability that's coming from the federal government. But I think it's time for Congress to continue to talk about the alternatives to Obamacare, how we can make health care more affordable and accessible so that Americans know that there's an alternative to this. If we go too much further down the road and people get on subsidies, they lose their health insurance, it's going to be hard to revive the private health insurance market. So there are a lot of ways to make health insurance less expensive, more accessible. That's what we should be working on. And for the life of me, I can't imagine why Republicans wouldn't keep talking about it. That's why I think so many Democrats are retiring. Americans are beginning to figure out that all of the things that they promised, whether it was a stimulus or Dodd-Frank would make credit easier or Obamacare would increase jobs, they haven't been telling the truth, and their programs aren't working.
Yeah. Senator DeMint, I love that you're not a senator anymore because, I love hypothetical questions, and whenever you ask an elected official a hypothetical question, you always say, well, I don't answer hypothetical questions. You're not going to get off the hook here, Senator DeMint. I'm going to ask you a hypothetical. If hypothetically you were assured that the border was secure and anyone who violated a student or visitor's visa in this country were tracked down and sent back home and the laws were truly enforced on immigration, would you then be open to some of the other things that have been floated, like, for instance, some legalization or regularization of some of the people who are here illegally, not citizenship, but maybe a certain kind of permit so they can stay but not get the vote? Would you be open to that?
Well, I'm just not going to jump on that again either, because we need a system that proves that it works. If we have a guest worker program, we have good border security, if we're inviting the people to come to our country from around the world that we want, I think you would see the situation with those who come here illegally begin to resolve itself. So I don't want to jump at some legal status.
Well, but hold on. What do you mean resolve itself? Because we've got, some people are estimating 11 million. Some people estimate more here in the country. How is that going to resolve itself?
Well, I just think there's no place for them to go now in a system other than just legal status, which, as Thomas Sowell said yesterday, why are we making laws to reward people who broke the laws?
Yeah.
Why don't we do that for burglars and extortionists and drug dealers? And we don't do that. So the idea that we're so concerned with those who come here illegally, we need to be concerned about American citizens, Hispanics, and others who come here legally, and make sure they have more opportunity and better education. That's what an immigration system should do, is make life better for Americans that are here.
Right.
And not to start out with, okay, how can we solve the problem of those who are living in the shadows because they came here illegally? I think that is the last thing we need to deal with after we fix our immigration system.
Senator Jim DeMint, always great to have you. We love having you. Please come back again.
Please come back, yeah.
By the way, I missed it. Are you supporting Lindsey Graham, your former colleague there from South Carolina, for re-election?
Well, the good thing about being at Heritage is we don't support
you are slippery this morning.
All right,
Thank you, Senator.
Always a pleasure. Thanks. Come back.
All right.